Hello, everyone. We've just got another clip show this week in our cynical effort to feed the algorithm. So I just have a couple notes about this first clip. We were talking about alternative energy for cars. We talked a little bit about hydrogen, or I talked a little bit about hydrogen, all while we were just, enjoying some delicious donuts. So excuse the talking with our mouth full. Probably the worst produced podcast on the internet. Anyway, so just a couple notes. I had talked about hydrogen power for cars and how I didn't know about anyone, or how I thought that perhaps I should try packaging the hydrogen as a cryogenic liquid instead of a compressed gas. And I don't think anyone had tried it. For those of you who don't know, that the liquid would be much more energy dense because when it expands as a gas, I'm not sure what the ratio is for hydrogen, but for example, when water turns to steam, it expands 1,200 times. So it's 1,200 times less dense as steam than it is as water. I know for nitrogen, because I used to work with it, that when it turns into a gas, it's 700 times less dense than it is as a liquid, and hydrogen is somewhere in between the two, I think. So if you could package hydrogen as a liquid, it would be much more dense and you could get much more energy out of a given area of fuel storage capacity. Anyway, I was wrong. It turns out that BMW actually tried such an experiment with a 7 Series. There was a great video on the great YouTube channel Engineering Explained, where Jason Fensky talks about that project and the flaws involved in it. I will link that video in the show description if you care to go check it out. Yeah. All right. Thanks.
Messy donuts. Those icing sprinkle ones, they're always good and messy. So anyway, electric cars. The problem comes when at the end of the lifespan, right? Motors don't really wear out, so that's okay. There's a bunch of them that can be recycled. Electric car manufacturers are working on making their stuff out of recyclable cars or recyclable stuff. But the issue still comes down to the batteries. Batteries, the lithium.
Talking about EVs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lithium-ion batteries do not dispose well.
But it's also rare earth stuff too. Right? You have to get out of like China.
So, and re-extracting that stuff and using it to build new batteries is not easy.
I understand they're working very hard on a lithium alternative.
I think so, yeah. That happened because lithium is becoming very scarce. Lithium went up 600% last year.
No, not bad.
So,
Isn't the Holy Grail supposed to be hydrogen fueled?
well, you can do hydrogen.
Toyota's really looking at hydrogen.
There's a lot. BMWs have been making hydrogen. Honda's still doing hydrogen. Hyundai's got hydrogen cars running around California and the UK. Hydrogen, the only problem with hydrogen is the problem is all hydrogen is attached to something. So you can inefficiently make hydrogen with using electrolysis out of water. That's the green way to do it if you can use green energy to do it, right? Solar. And then that can be used in a fuel cell car to run an electric car, or it can be used in an internal combustion engine. The other problem with hydrogen, and I don't know why, I mean it would be more complicated. And being more complicated is asking people for a lot these days, but it's all put in compressed. Nobody liquefies, they don't liquefy it.
Okay.
And put it, like a fuel tanks, my thing is why don't they just make a fuel tank like a cryogenic tank, right? And then you could have liquid hydrogen and then you would have lots of range. Because you could just let the tank gradually heat up and it would, there's problems there I guess, but you let the tank heat up, it would create pressure itself, use that and create gas, and but because it'd be like a vacuum vessel, it wouldn't do it very quickly, right? And you could create gas and use that gas the way you would use a compressed hydrogen, but they don't seem to want to do that. Maybe asking people to learn how to look what to look for in their cryogenic vessels is a little too much.
Well, I guess my thinking there is my original thought was now every car owner has to know WHMIS, but it's actually more they'd have to know how to. They need a dangerous goods score. just to be able to use it. Kind of, you know, because it's compressed.
Yeah, my point of view is that it's safer as a cryogenic liquid than it is as a compressed gas. All right.
That makes, well, yeah.
It's at lower pressure. The biggest hazard is cold. But, I mean, hydrogen. The other problem with hydrogen is it's extremely flammable.
Well, yeah.
So if you end up
gasoline.
Everyone's driving around a little, I mean, Hindenburg, right? I mean, that's what I kind of.
that's the other issue. Hydrogen. But I mean, I don't think that's super dangerous, right?
No, I mean,
Hindenburg was dangerous.
if you invent
because it was-
gasoline engines tomorrow, people would freak out about the safety implications. Oh my God, you're just gonna let you got this incredibly energy dense, flammable liquid.
Mm-hmm.
You're just gonna leave it in storage tanks, where like Joe Blow, who's working for minimum wage, is gonna be supervising this thing,
Yeah.
and then you're gonna let any idiot off the street walk up
And
and
just
operate the transfer station on their own
Yeah,
with
but-
no
but, I mean,
supervision.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I sense you being ironic with this because
Oh.
the same point is that gasoline's pretty much the same concept. You know?
Yeah, exactly. If you and we're fine. When was the last time you saw somebody blow up a gas station that wasn't in a Bruce Willis movie?
a long time. There's there's no video on YouTube.
Well, hang
from
on,
it.
didn't Rambo do it in the first movie?
That's true. That's true. I
yeah.
can't correct it. But it's an incredibly rare occurrence.
Yeah.
So I think we'd handle hydrogen.
Didn't they do it in T2 as well?
Oh, probably, yeah. I seem to remember, like, this is going way back, 80s, 90s at the latest. I think it was actually 80s. There, you know, it's one of those in search of, but I don't think it was in search of.
Something like that.
It's some sort of, you know, quasi
Pseudoscience kind of.
borderline tin hat back in the day.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It was about some guy who invented an engine that ran off of water.
Mm-hmm.
And I think someone stole the patent from out under him, and he turned up dead or disappeared or some fucking thing, and just one of those stories that kind of went away, you know.
I think these designs were that they used water and then split. That's how they got hydrogen. Was by splitting the oxygen off of it, emitting the oxygen, and then using the hydrogen as the fuel source.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's how these original water burning things designed.
Power.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's what I'm thinking. It must
Yeah.
be the same because you need
But
you need oxygen to be able to combust anyway. So you just split
But
them up and then.
all your energy is consumed in splitting the hydrogen.
Yeah, because using electrolysis to split oxygen off of hydrogen is not. It's an energy loss. You don't get as much energy back as you put into it.
But don't you eventually create kind of a self-perpetuating system where that you gain that energy back? No, it's
I don't think you would.
The energy to break the bonds is not equal to the energy that you get, or is greater than the energy you get back. So that's why you have to use. That's why you have to use either nuclear, or if you can get reliable solar or wind, basically.
A constant power source.
But you need constant power, and it needs to be cheap.
Okay, so not only would we have a cryogenic liquid nitrogen, but we need
Hydrogen, but yeah.
liquid hydrogen. Sorry, but we also need a mini nuclear power plant to.
To make the problem with hydrogen cars is just making the hydrogen, right? Or hydrogen power is just getting the hydrogen. It's the hydrogen is the problem with that one. It's not the car. It's not the technology. The technology's there. So if you need, now there's been some interesting alternative stuff in like pure hydrocarbons using. It's kind of the same problem because it uses hydrogen. They asked us to separate. There's a plant out in Rupert, or not in Rupert, in Kitimat, yeah. That does that. They make hydrogen. They take CO2 out of the air using an air separation unit, and then they have an electrolysis plant running off wind turbines, so that way they're completely green. And I think the turbines also power their air separation unit as well. And so then they combine the hydrogen with the carbon dioxide, and it gives them a pure hydrocarbon that's carbon neutral because they pull it out of the air. And so it's a pure hydrocarbon that will burn in any internal combustion engine. And there's a few places that are doing this now. It'll burn in any internal combustion engine, and it's carbon neutral because you pull it out of the air and you just put it back.
But it's horribly inefficient. Like, it's expensive.
Yeah, well, that's why you have to use, again,
Interesting.
nuclear power becomes
It
really...
can only exist because of the political imperative.
Yeah, the way it exists using wind turbines and stuff like that is because of subsidies. For it to be economically viable, you have to power with
Like,
nuclear
the
power.
only reason why we're doing this is because we're told to do it. Not because it makes sense in and of itself.
If we ever get to the climate change episode, I mean, I like what you just said there, because it kind of defines for me where the argument is occurring and doesn't and shouldn't be occurring. Right? You put it, you put it in political terms. It's not. It's politically expedient, even though it's practically inefficient. Right?
Yeah.
What we need to do is get to the point where the whole conversation is all about whether or not there's a need, right? And that needs to be had, again, unemotionally. You have to have people not screaming on the left or the right about, yes, this is happening, we need to panic, and no, this isn't happening, la 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 la, don't take away my cars or my economy.
Well, it's hard to make...
My life expectancy.
It's hard to actually make a rational economic argument for car ownership, right? Because cars are very expensive, and they get used very little, right? For example, my car has not moved in 12, no. Yeah, my Golf there. Has not moved in 12 hours, 14 hours, right? And before that, it moved for 40 minutes. Then it sat where it was for 13 hours, and then it moved 40 minutes to get back, right? So I use the thing an hour and a half a day.
The problem with it is, it's like a jack.
Yeah.
Or a set of tools.
Yeah.
99.9% of the time, you're not using them.
Yeah.
But when
you need them.
but when you do need them, they are irreplaceable.
But from an economic standpoint, yeah. But from an economic standpoint, that's where
Could you make the
that's
same,
where people get. That's where the ideas for ride-sharing services like Uber and Lyft came up.
But could you make the same argument with a washing machine?
What's interesting is he was using the term appliance earlier, which I thought was fascinating. You're using appliance as a term for cars.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the vast majority of people, it's a mobility appliance, right? That's what it is. They don't want it to break. They want it to be as reliable as
possible.
This is why Toyota Camrys and Honda Accords and these cars that have had 50 years of evolution built into them to become as reliable and practical as possible are the best-selling cars in the world. Because people want a car that is as trouble-free as their washing machine or as their microwave.
We're going to have one more, then you dickheads better start pulling your weight.
God damn it, you took the last Boston cream.
On what?
I got a maple for it.
Do you want the maple or do you want the frost?
What's in the frosted one? Some
It's
some strawberry thing.
Oh, Jesus fuck.
It's just really messy. That's the whole point of it. It's not about how it tastes. It's about how much of it ends up on your shirt.
Right.
You guys need to get with the program.
I believe that's 4-H, right? Where we're being we're being properly socialist about this.
We have just made some very, very bad dietary decisions.
I don't talk about the burger I had before you got here.
Speaking of which, thanks again for last week. Not just the provision, but
That was a great
all
day.
the work.
That was a great day. Try, go on. Try one of the points.
Well, just the point is that the vast majority of people who want cars want them to be as trouble-free and as reliable and as maintenance-free as their washing machine or their microwave or their oven. Electric cars are better at that than internal combustion cars.
Yep.
So that's why, as an appliance, because the vast majority of use cases for cars is a mobility appliance, right? Not many people are enthusiasts, right? So I would be perfectly happy. There used to be an electric version of that Golf out there, right? I would be happy to drive to work in the electric version. It's only got
I'd totally an electric car if I could afford it.
Well, There's a subcurrent to it.
But I
What
also
points you
want
make?
I also want the car that makes noise and vibrates and shakes and is a little stinky. I want that one for when I want to go have fun. Right.
There you go. So then you actually
So
pulled into 2 points.
I'm not trying to advocate saying, well, we don't go to the electric future. I'm skeptical of the electric future as the future, but I can't tell you what the real future will be.
Yeah.
Like I feel like the battery is the limiting factor. I feel like at some point somebody is going to hit on an uber energy dense energy solution, non-polluting energy solution, hopefully.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. And the battery will go the way of the dodo because this thing will be in every car.
Yeah, the batteries won't be able to compete with it.
Yeah. Right? So, and again, like I say, so from an economic, it's hard to make an economic argument against electric cars as appliances. They make better appliances. They don't necessarily do it in this country because the Tesla Model S, or the Tesla, there's a guy in Winnipeg did a test, put it on YouTube.
That's right.
Yeah, no
He had a Tesla Model 3, the high mileage one, which is supposed to have a 300 miles, so it's 450 kilometers
Yeah.
range in the U.S. in normal temperatures. Did a range test with it in January when it was minus 31 or 32 in Winnipeg. The guy lives in Winnipeg.
Yeah.
He got 160 clicks out of it. Right? So we still have that problem of batteries don't work so well in the cold.
I actually had that issue with my iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
Extremes of temperature, hot or cold,
Yeah.
the thing stops working.
Yeah.
You know, because it's made for California. Or China or Japan or whatever. It's just not made for Edmonton, Alberta.
Well, it's designed in, right, and not even hot California, not Southern California. Remember,
Yeah.
is designed in Cupertino, which is right by the bay.
Yeah.
Right, so it's.
But yeah, that kind of is an issue with a lot of, like say tires, for example.
Mm-hmm.
There's a massive shortage of great big like tires for front end loaders, graders, whatnot that are winter rated.
Mm-hmm.
Because as one guy who sells these tires pointed out to me that they're made in California, or they're not made in California. The demand in California is bigger by itself than almost everywhere else in North America combined. There's just so many of these units in California or within a day's drive of California.
Because California's spread out too compared to say New York.
Yeah, it's just such a high population
Well,
area.
It's like the third population,
Yep.
the third economy in the
Yep.
world or something.
Yeah, exactly. So it's huge. So if you're building tires that are summer rated,
You got a room?
what's that? Well, just because how you see, these are the way it's supposed to be. If you're building a factory, or if you've got a factory and you're making these summer rated tires, and the Sunbelt states are consuming 100% of your output, why would you shut down your factory for 2 weeks to retool it to change your rubber compound to make winter rated tires? Why? Why would you forego 2 weeks of sales? Why would you sacrifice 2 weeks of production when 100% of what you're buying is being purchased? And it's not like we can say, well, we need to build our own factory for these things. No, because the factory we have here would make the exact same conclusion. There is more demand than there is supply. It's just that the barriers to entry are so large, it's just not easy to build a new tire factory. So if we did build a tire factory in Saskatoon, people from Texas and people from Nevada would be calling it and saying, hey man, how many of those summer rated tires do you have? We got 60. Okay, we'll buy them all. You got any more? We'll have another 60 next week. Okay, we'll buy those too. They're not going to make winter tires. It's all about just being efficient.
Yeah.
Speaking of CF history, I'm seeing the date 1689.
1689.
And the
Oh, that's right. I'm
and
wearing
a
a gun
Canadian-
control shirt.
a Canadian maple leaf there. So I'm racking my head. 1689. What the hell happened in 1689? Anywhere, let alone in Canada.
It was the Bill of Rights in the UK, which enshrined the right to self-defense. Now, it was not. It was definitely flawed legislation by our standards, in that it restricted this right to self-defense to Protestants.
Okay.
But of course, you know, to avoid our penchant for presentism, where we impose the morality of the present onto the past.
Understood.
Given the context of the time, there was definite fear of sectarian violence within Europe at the time. I mean, this is the time of the 30 Years' War and the Reformation.
Well, the 30 Years War was over by then. But
True.
yeah, they
But
just
the
got
wounds were
through
fresh.
it, and the
Yes.
English Civil War.
The wounds were fresh.
And yeah, there was plenty going on in
Yeah.
the 17th century, no question. In fact, if
So-
I'm not mistaken, King Billy was around that in the 1600s sometimes too.
Yes, it was. Yes, and like this is the time of like the emergence of Protestant fundamentalism in Scotland, with Jean Calvin and John Knox, predestination as a religious as a religious doctrine, the Covenanters, John Pym's Solemn League and Covenant, Oliver Cromwell had not been in the grave 30 years by this point. So yeah, it was definitely a time of great upheaval and chaos. And religious differences did play a huge role in that. And so, of course, I think that's the context by which it felt that the individual citizen should have the right to self-defense. That the state could not be there to enforce law and order in all situations. And therefore, it was considered under this original, it is the first Bill of Rights, on par with Magna Carta in terms of legislative precedent.
I was just going to bring up Magna Carta.
But because, of course, it's not politically correct for our age, it's often not talked about. It was the first recognition of the sanctity of the rights of the individual.
Which is always important.
Huge. It's
Whenever,
huge.
like I said,
It's huge.
In my humble opinion, that has been
Yeah.
human history, has been the evolution
Of
the recognition of the rights
individual
of
human
more
rights.
and more people.
Yeah.
More and more disenfranchised.
And of course, that was a cornerstone of the Bill of Rights of 1689, was the right to keep and bear arms for self-defense.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I actually want to stop the conversation on that now, because it should come up in what we're about to talk about. You were talking about Stroke. You had a war story to tell, or a soldier's tale.
Oh, well,
Winter Indo.
No, it was just about,
yeah.
not smoking and drinking coffee.
Oh, okay.
And Ernie was like, "Why the fuck are you in the army?" Or how are you in the army? Or
Yeah.
it was
What
why
the
are
fuck
you
are
in the army?
you doing?
Yeah. I'm like the only. I'm like, and I was like, "Yes, Warren. I know I'm the only one."
Okay, I had it the other way around. Vernon busted me reading Jane Austen on X.
That would get.
I was sitting in the Iltis.
Well, especially Vernon.
Yeah, that would draw some comment.
Vernon being the pop culture nut he is too, that he would.
Yeah, well, it was actually impressive that he actually knew enough
What,
that
to know who
Austen
Jane
would-
Austen was?
You had to know who Austen was enough to do right it. Like, what the hell are you doing reading that shit for? You're supposed to be a soldier.
Everybody knows who Jane Austen is. There's all these
I think
fucking
it's
crappy movies. She's penetrated the popular culture pretty well. I think people can understand who Jane Austen is.
I don't know. I'm betting if you talk to any 20-year-old right now, wouldn't come up.
Yeah, sure, but Austin had definitely penetrated, because you got to remember, Vernon is a huge music buff. He's a huge movie buff,
Right.
and he's a big popular culture. And there definitely been a few Austin works, Sense and Sensibility,
Oh,
had
yeah.
probably been made by that point, and I'm sure, and Jane Eyre might have been made by that point. He was busting you.
I don't think Jane Eyre is Austen. I think Jane Eyre is...
Oh no, you're right. I got that one wrong. But
the other one. I was just having this conversation the other day. Bronte,
Probably right.
one of the Brontes.
Yeah, but like
Yeah, no, I'm kidding.
Vernon is
You're
well enough
right.
that he would know who Jane Austen is, and even I knew who Jane Austen was quite a while. So, and I'm a troglodyte.
You're not.
I was. This is a few years ago, back when I was like a few years ago, like 10 probably. I was talking to a girl, just on messaging. I think probably on Plenty of Fish or something. I was doing that, and she's like, "How would you describe yourself in like a few words?" I can't remember if she said 3 words or 2 words, and I just said, "Well-read redneck." And it was fucking crickets after that. Like she ghosted me. I'm like, all right, fine.
Yeah.
That should be a selling point.
Yeah.
Well, I think so.
Yeah, but you know what? Different strokes for different folks, and at least now we're not wasting anyone's time.
Yeah.
It seems to be it's got more complicated than it used to be. It's something like 9/5 and 5/9. So you don't double it and add 30 or 32 anymore. It's actually 9/5.
What? The metric
The-
Fahrenheit conversion?
Right. But if you use the old
Well,
one,
what? Room temperature is 72?
yeah,
Yeah.
20 is 72. Right.
No, that's
I don't think
higher
that's.
than
I don't think what it. I don't think that's what it is in Celsius, but I'm pretty sure room temperature is 72 degrees.
20 Celsius is 72 Fahrenheit.
What is?
Using the old formula, double it and add 32. Right.
Okay, maybe using the old formula, but
Sure, if you're talking early Flintstones.
Normal room temperature.
Anyways, you were saying 90, subtract 30, that's 60, halve that, that's 30 degrees. Okay, sucks, right? But
Average room temperature is around 20 degrees Celsius or 68 degrees Fahrenheit.
okay, you're right. You're close enough. 72 is 22.22.
So that's
and
I
that,
have a
ladies and
conversion.
gentlemen, if we're recording this, is the one time I'm going to hear those words coming out of either of these guys' mouths.
what?
You're right.
You're right. Don't get used to it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Don't get cocky.
that's a full 10 degrees
I
higher
mean-
than ideal room temperature.
Yeah. I mean, we've got AC, but it's expensive,
Yeah.
right? We went this whole summer without turning it on. And
Yeah.
we had some hot freaking days, and the house was hot for like weeks on end, right? We just left the windows open. We opened the front door overnight. and-
Yeah,
And
I've
eventually,
never, I've
you know,
never
it was
purchased
bearable.
air conditioning.
Well,
I mean,
It's not
we
really
only-
worthwhile here.
No, we only need it for like 3 weeks out of the year.
And we're
And I
talking-
have a ceiling fan in my bedroom.
And you did
that's
say
fine.
Colorado, right?
Yeah,
I can't see the climate being too much different. Maybe
No,
more humid than
because
here,
Colorado's
but
high.
They've had some weird weather now because they had
sounds like climate change to me.
last week. They had they're having a drought.
When it's too hot, it's climate change. When it's cold, it's just weather.
Yeah,
It's just weather.
No, that's why
No,
it's
but
called
they're-
climate change, not global warming.
yeah.
Yeah,
But it's,
there you go. Yeah, that's why they don't use the term global warming.
They're
It's
having
not
they're
always
having
warming.
obviously a massive drought in the American Southwest right now, and they had some weird weather last week. They had a tropical storm that was kind of hugging the coast of Mexico and working its way up and blowing a lot of hot air up in the U.S. And then it hit San Diego, and then all of a sudden they got dumped on. They're like San Diego all the way up to Orange County. I guess just got dumped like inches and inches of rains in an hour, and they're like flash flood warnings. And I talked to McCully about it because he's actually North Los Angeles in Ventura
Yeah.
County, and he was like, "Yeah, we got a little sprinkle up here, but San Diego, I guess, got the worst of it." Which is weird because San Diego is like the most stable weather in all
Yeah.
of North America. It's
Yeah.
like 70 average temperature, 78 degrees, and it's never like plus or minus like 5 or 10 of that in Fahrenheit all year, with like 2 inches of rain average a year, and all of a sudden
Yeah.
they just get dumped.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sounds like climate change.
It's just a tropical storm, man.
Just saying. Outside the norm. I'm just being a shit disturber right
Yes,
now.
you are.
so.
And what's going on with the USDA asking people to register their gardens?
I have no idea.
Yeah, that's weird.
I haven't heard that one.
Yeah, someone just told me about it yesterday. I wanted to get my
Food
thought on it.
control.
Well, it certainly
This
raises
is
that
food
specter,
control
doesn't
to
it?
Major Tom.
Who knows?
I
I mean, you
have-
know what? The way things are going these days, who knows?
I have read, like when I go trolling left-wing publications, I have read articles saying, calling for
rationing, food rationing, and food controls, just as a good in and of itself. Not saying that, well, we're running out of food, we need to ration it. Just saying, no, it's a good idea to ration food, simply because we can make people healthier if we control what they eat, and they're not going to waste food. Like the whole top-down idea that
we have a system of food rationing. It's called your bank balance.
But like the usual top-down idea that
and the ration coupons aren't going as far as they used to either, right?
right that people can't make their own decisions, therefore we need a benevolent elite to make decisions for them. Yeah. That's basically what it comes to.
Yes, no, maybe so.
So I've read that.
So let's talk about, say, rationing during the war. Mm-hmm. There was lots of rationing from food, rubber, aluminum,
metals,
and a lot of it was pointless too. Like not so much the rationing part, but the save all your tin cans and save all your aluminum.
The metal drives.
The metal drives. That was purely psychological because none of that metal went to the war effort.
Really?
No, none of it.
No.
Like the aluminum didn't go to airplanes, the tin cans didn't go into tanks. None of it. It was all propaganda effort.
Well,
and getting
that mindset going.
Yeah.
Yep.
But okay, so definitely in the UK during the war,
there was
food rationing.
Severe food rationing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good or bad?
Well, it was because of the U-boat blockade, from what I understand.
So there are circumstances under which, and just big picture, there are circumstances under which it's acceptable for a government to propose and legislate food rationing.
Successful? Because I know that there was a large black market.
Oh yeah, there would have been a large black market. There always is whenever there's rationing.
So,
and stuff, right?
Is it effective?
It was probably.
Like I know
you can't just say because some people were stepping outside of it that it wasn't effective, right?
Well, no, but I can't say that it was effective either. I've never seen any analysis of it. I know that it happened, but I haven't seen anybody really dive into it to say, okay, was this worth the time and effort of doing it?
Very interesting question. I guess I'm proceeding from the assumption that it was a good thing, a proper thing, an appropriate thing, not an inappropriate thing to do, and people got on with it, and it was all good. I mean, I'm looking at this, we've talked about a lot of disaster scenarios, a lot of end games around this table here, around these mics. It was 20 years ago before when I kind of realized for myself one end game I was kind of playing out in from a capitalism point of view. Interestingly enough, going into today's discussion, was basically when it comes to resources, all the properties on the monopoly board have been bought. Now it's about who's getting control of what. Now it's all the guys who own stuff are just fighting for control of what there is because there's nothing new to get. Now they're all just seeing who gets most, right? And food's definitely a part of that. Food and water are the two big ones.
So it's basically the way Europe has been for like over 1,000 years.
It's a very Malthusian outlook.
Wow, you name droppers. I don't know this. I never met him. What's he like?
Malthus?
Yeah.
Well, Malthus was...
He was a Jewish rapper.
Yeah, he was Jewish. J. Diddy, no.
He was very, very, very well known for the Jamaican longhouse style of snapping lyrics.
Well, Malthus wasn't really made famous until what's his name wrote the book The Population.
Yes, starts with an E.
Paul Ehrlich.
Paul Ehrlich, yeah. Who has been wrong on pretty much every major prediction he has ever made.
Yeah, still has a job. He
still has a job, and still has a following.
Yeah.
And yet you're quoting someone that he quoted.
Well, he's the one who really kind of put Malthus back into the public eye. He was largely forgotten.
So what happened is Malthus' theory was basically that the population was going to continue to expand, and we were going to outstrip our resources.
That we would breed like rats.
There's been a lot of that we just keep breeding and breeding and breeding and breeding and breeding, and nothing would stop what we were doing, and our population was going to grow out of control. And then Paul Ehrlich published the book The Population Bomb in 1970,
somewhere around there.
In late 60s, early 70s, and that became it's basically a reiteration of Malthus, which is why when we talk about that, we always just say it's very Malthusian. But Ehrlich published the book, and he used a bunch of numbers, and then and said, well, this is what's going to happen, and by this point, it was like the year 2000, like there's going to be mass starvations in the 90s and the 2000s. That just didn't happen, right? Because he didn't account for the decrease in birth rates, because he didn't see it coming. He believed that the humanity was just going to keep growing and growing, and it's not like the population stopped, but he also thought that production was going to stay static, right? So a guy named Julian Simon made a bet with Ehrlich in 1980, and this came up. I've listened to this a lot.
It's a famous example.
The famous bet, but a guy named Julian Simon made a bet with Ehrlich. Ehrlich could pick the commodities, and based on the price that they were in 1980, he said had Ehrlich pick 5 commodities, and Ehrlich picked all non-renewable metals like chromium, tin, copper, and stuff like that. And Simon bet him that in 1990 all those things would be cheaper
than what they were at the time.
In 1980, and he didn't specify. Like Ehrlich picked the commodities, and ended up he'd won. All those things were cheaper in 1990.
Yeah, because like Simon knew that as demand increased and scarcity increased, humanity would develop alternatives.
Yeah, well, and just that we'd be able to produce, we'd become more efficient in our use of the stuff, and production techniques
humanity would react to the problem.
And then, and this has come up a lot in the last couple of weeks because Marion Tupy and another fellow just wrote a book called Superabundance. He's just come up with it. He's been doing the podcast circuit, plugging his book, and so I've heard this story in the last 2 weeks. I've heard this stories like 6 times, and. So Tupy is taking the Simon's perspective and going way beyond, and kind of Schellenberger's perspective from Apocalypse Never.
Yeah.
To that things are fine, things are okay.
It depends on who you are and where you are.
And that Malthus is still wrong. Well, but everybody's. But you look. Schellenberger pointed this out in Apocalypse Never, and Tupy is on this about it, and Peterson's talked about this a lot, that everybody's lot in life is better in the last 20 years.
Yeah, it's a sliding scale, but there are still people who are suffering. There are still people dying of starvation somewhere in the world. There are still people living in poverty
across the board.
Yeah, and
and next year there's going to be more because of this whole Ukraine thing, but
well, hopefully not, but it could be definitely. But that's a blip.
Yeah,
but
it's absolutely a blip. Yeah,
the story of our last 70 years of history is one of unmitigated progress and advancement.
It's actually the last 200 years.
Really, yeah. But like it's really taken off.
Because I've got a video queued up here that I want us to watch before we get into the conversation. But
in fact, in the last 40. Since 1980, it's been absolutely ridiculous, off the charts.
Well, yeah, I mean, so that's when the TRS-80 came out, right? And you start seeing.
I don't think the two are related.
I don't know. I look at most things in terms of microchips and computer science.
Well, there's a lot of things, and it happens. It happens like the microchip taking over from the transistor, taking over from the vacuum tube, right? That's
yeah.
But you can also go back too from when we started with the external combustion engine, also known as the steam engine, and the miniaturization that happened once we went from external combustion to internal combustion.
Yeah.
Right? Because you look at a small block Chevy, compared to a steam engine on a ship that makes the same horsepower.
A locomotive,
or a locomotive that made the same horsepower, right? Like, one is a tenth the size of the other and makes more power.
Yeah.
Right? Like, the same kind of miniaturization and portability just...
Oh, I know, but I think what I really look at is basically the last 12 to 20 years in terms of, and it's all about mobile devices.
You're recording this because it fits right into our conversation today.
It's all about mobile devices, right? I look back in 2000, like even if Netflix, you can watch shows and anything that's made 2000 or earlier, right? There's no cell phones,
no,
right? And I can remember, I got my first cell phone in 2005, 2006. It was a flip phone. It was one of the ones where you had 3 letters per button. You had to cycle through them and stuff like that.
My dad was a very early adopter, and he got a Motorola brick when they were in the 90s, I guess, when they came out.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, he got a Motorola brick for the longest time, and he was a very early adopter for cell phones.
But all this stuff, the smartphone stuff, the smartphone revolution, that was, for me, that was basically 2007, 2008.
Yeah.
So we're talking the last 15 years. And it's just how our society is completely
Yeah, because I had
focused on that these days. Not only does my phone have a camera, now has a flashlight. Not only is there a flashlight on it, my flashlight has fucking advertising. It just blows my mind. I go to hit the on button for my flashlight, and there's a little ad at the bottom. It's like, for fuck off sake,
How much did you pay for the flashlight?
Nothing.
Really?
but you just
It's a free app.
Very
download.
interesting.
I know.
You got an iPhone?
You don't see a connection between.
Well, of course
those
I see a connection.
two. You see where I'm going with that?
No, that's just it. But even okay,
So you had to get an app because you got an iPhone, right?
yeah.
You had to get an app because on an Android it's just right there automatically, right?
Yeah,
A lot of apps, a lot of common apps are like that.
And no advertising, so
The very first,
Yeah.
the very first calendar apps were aftermarket, and then they started becoming dedicated features when phones came out. So I think that's pretty common with a lot of apps. Mm-hmm. Like what is a very, very common aftermarket app in the early generations, just like fairings on motorcycles. Windjammer made a great business in the early 80s making retrofit fairings for all of these, first generation Honda Goldwings. And then Honda said, you know what? Why should we let
Craig Vedder make all this money
him
instead?
make all this money? We'll make them. And
then boom, the Goldwing grew a fairing and it became
so the same thing with things like flashlights on cell phones.
Well, I mean, even so, what I do with I need downtime, right? When I need downtime, I need something to occupy my mind. I play a lot of solitaire on the computer, right? And I actually I noticed this the other day. Copyright 1990 or since 1990. So Microsoft has had
another one over there if you can reach that or not.
Oh, I don't think I can. No, it's not that
Here,
right.
that's a USB-C.
Yeah.
We can switch places.
I just need an extension cord. If you got an extension, this is the wrong cord. So yeah, my cord is about as useful as an ashtray on a motorcycle right now.
Is yours an Apple?
No, it's USB-C to USB. I got double USB-C on this one,
So,
which is kind of pointless.
but your thing charges USB-C, right?
Yeah.
You got one?
Right on. Nice bye. Yeah, it's just the old battery's starting to get a little thin.
Oh, you need a little more.
It's starting to get a little thin. There we go. Okay, we're in business, boys.
There you go.
No, we're not.
I was just saying, solitaire on the computer used to be just
Now we're in business.
used to be just this thing, right? It was this accessory you got with your computer and you play stuff. Nowadays, it's ever since apps have come along. I go to open solitaire on the computer. It wants me to go online. It's got all the other stuff that's going.
Yeah.
It's got advertising if you are online.
Yeah, and all these
Like, holy fuck,
variations
come
of
on.
it. And
You've been giving this away for free all this time. Now,
yeah, but
Well,
Fuck
as
this.
the saying goes, if the app is free or the service is free,
you're not the customer.
you're not the customer, you're the product.
You're the problem.
actually, I read that somewhere today. I think it was in Apple News or Facebook or something. Crazy.
Yeah, it's
That
true.
exact
And,
quote.
Like I was having a conversation with Steve about he's a Canadian actually. I think his name is William White. Young fellow in his 20s.
No, surely no one's that young
And
anymore.
well, not super young. He's not a teenager. Like he's definitely well into millennial. Like he's not Gen Z.
I don't even know what those things mean anymore.
I'll say I think I stand to be corrected, but I think Gen Z is like teenagers,
Okay.
like 10 to 18, and millennials like
Gen
20
Z
to
or
30.
Zoomers are in their the upper end are in their lower 20s right now,
Okay.
and then
So millennials we can say are 25.
millennials, well, because
25 to 35.
no, millennials are older. like elder millennials are in their 40s. Because I'm basically bottom end, not quite the bottom. I'm 75. 79 is the bottom end of X, and then millennials start. So like the
Okay.
So
elder
millennials.
millennials are like in their.
So it goes
40,
boomers.
41.
Wow.
Boomers, Gen X, millennials,
Yep.
Yes,
And then
then
Gen
Zoomers.
Z.
and then Gen Z.
Gen Z.
Gen Z, yeah.
Which they have taken to calling themselves Zoomers now.
Yeah.
And Gen Z calls anyone who's not in Gen Z boomers.
Boomer. Yeah.
Oh,
Sure,
okay.
boomer.
So that's okay. All right, boomer.
But yeah, they,
All
they
right.
tend to
Okay,
be
boomer.
they tend to be the children of and grandchildren of boomers, I guess. Or
Well,
they're like the
grandchildren of
echo
boomers.
Great
of the baby
grandchildren
boom.
of boomers.
So like Zoomer is a play on the word boomer.
Yeah.
I apparently have the luxury of choosing which one I am. I'm either boomer or Gen X. 'Cause they say 65 is right on the cusp.
Yeah.
I
So
think so. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, there's always a certain amount of overlap on this stuff. But at any rate, they were. This guy is mid to late 20s, and he has created. He's very very handsome man, and he has created quite a lucrative business for himself. Creating, I don't know, something of a thirst trap for women in their 40s and their 50s. Where a lot of it is really inane content. A lot of it is where he simply lip syncs to Neil Diamond songs or music that was popular
Right.
to,
He's doing this on TikTok, right?
Yes.
I remember this conversation.
to women in that age group. And he shamelessly solicits
Money.
donations and money from them, almost in the style of an OnlyFans kind of arrangement. Saying, well, you know, I'll dance and sing to this tune or that tune, whichever one generates more donations or more tokens or whatever. And there are hundreds of thousands.
Really? So you'll have two or more camps saying this song or that song. They're all giving money, and he has to do one of the songs.
Yeah, and he's getting money from either one. And he is shameless in his requests for women to just give him money for the most ridiculous of things. And that this is
Like
become
more
in
ridiculous
many
than what I
ways-
just described?
Oh yes. And it's become in many ways almost an obsession for some women, checking his content every hour. They almost like a psychological addiction, in that some women are get very very upset if he doesn't post new content every day. And this article was about this phenomenon, and it's more negative consequences of it. And I kind of sent this to Steve, like in the "I can't make this shit up" file. And Steve replied saying that, say what you want, but I never cease to be impressed at how younger people find newer and more interesting ways to monetize things. I said, yeah, it's an interesting.
It is part
it's
of
an
the human
interesting
condition.
point. Yeah, if you find a demand, then you can capitalize on supplying that demand, whatever it is. And in this case, again, solitaire was nothing more originally than a way to train people how to click and drag. That's all it was intended for. But it turned out to be much more popular than any of those software designers ever thought. The people enjoy playing it. And so then the idea was, well, there's a demand here. How can we monetize it?
Well, I think it was other people who did that first. Once you started seeing all these apps that are coming up. My girlfriend is all about these things. Right? She's got her game of the year. Type of thing. Every 6 months to a year, she finds a new game to start playing. She's got 2 or 3 on her iPad, and yeah, they can be incredibly addicting. It's just and what was it, Candyland or
Candy Crush.
Candy
Yeah,
Crush?
that's another one.
Farmville.
Candy Crush has actually had quite a lot of staying power because it's still
And,
kicking around, and it's been around for 4 or 5 years.
Angry Birds.
The one where you have to guess what the 5-letter word is.
Oh, that Wordle.
Wordle, yes.
That's fairly
That's
new.
another one that started as a free thing. They discovered the massive appetite for it. It became monetized.
Yeah, but I haven't seen a lot of people playing it lately. That was a flash in the
that
pan.
kind of killed it. But still, where nobody was making money from it,
Yeah,
they are making some money from it.
yeah.
Greatly reduced in player numbers, but
Yeah.
those who are playing it are now paying for it. Now, is it worth the money that I think New York Times bought it or something like this?
I think so, yeah.
Some media group
No,
bought
that
it or
makes
something or
sense.
other.
Yeah.
Is it worth the money they paid for it? Time will tell. I don't know.
Well, if the New York Times gets subscribers out of it,
I think that was the thing.
that's a
Like
good loss
New
leader,
York
right?
Times online subscribers get it for free or something.
Oh,
like
that could be it.
Yeah, I think
that's a
it's
plum for subscribing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an interesting.
Well, because they're the ones who do the crossword. Right?
Right.
That was the crossword you always want to be able to.
Well,
do.
that's been a big thing as the revenue models changed for newspapers, and the Times has had to adapt, and it's one of the reasons for the shift in, I guess, in coverage is that, like the Times, all newspapers' primary revenue sources were usually classified ads specifically, but generally advertising when they were in print, and now that they're primarily online, the primary revenue source is now subscription.
Right.
So now they're doing content to please the subscribers.
Yeah.
To drive clicks, and so
Yeah. Whatever works for them.
Interesting. Well, yeah, I mean, anyways, getting back to my original statement, it's like we've been talking about, and I agree, it's been a hyperbolic curve since, I don't know, the Industrial Revolution, right?
Parabolic curve, you mean?
Sure.
Hyperbolic, he said.
Hyperbolic, parabolic.
It's kind of different.
Isn't the hyperbolic is the half an arc? And
No, hyperbolic is when you say crazy things in an argument.
okay, well that sounds like me too.
That's it. Let's not dismiss it out of hand, he says.
All right.
I don't see these things as being mutually exclusive. Thank you very much. Okay, so a parabolic curve.
Parabolic curve.
Okay.
A parabola.
Uh,
I don't recall a hyperbola from geometry. So.
I swear, no. Oh man, no. Okay, well, I hope this doesn't make it into the off mic, not off mic.
We have the sum total of human knowledge at our fingertips, but I'm pretty sure.
No, I believe you. I'm not debating. Okay, parabolic, right?
Parabolic curve, yes.
Okay. Yeah, it was just the fact that I just can't believe. Basically, the smartphone revolution. To me, that's like 15 years. Now, it might be a couple of years longer than that, but that's when I got my first one. Was about 2007.
You're basically about right, because I'm trying to think of what I had. I went in the smartphone wars. I went Android right away, and I waited, and that had to have been. It was 2007 because it was. I know it was after I started working at Trican, and I just started Trican at the end of 2006, and I had like an early kind of quasi smartphone made by Samsung that had like Samsung's proprietary operating system on it, and they could get games, but there was no like apps. It was this phone could go on the internet, kind of thing, right? So yeah,
you can get your Facebook, you can get your email,
and then the iPhone came out, and then I went. I was due a hardware upgrade anyway, so I went and looked around, and I was convinced by the salesman to wait for the Android to come out. Like the iPhone was out and they were available. It was like, no, wait for the Samsung Galaxy to come out. It's better. I'm like, okay, so I waited. It was like 2 weeks. No big whoop, and got a Galaxy. I've been Android ever since. I've never been an iPhone guy.
Speaking of Paul Ehrlich, I got a great quote about him. This is from Chuck Klosterman. According to population expert Dr. Paul Ehrlich, we should currently be experiencing a dystopian dreamscape where, quote, survivors envy the dead, end quote, which seems true only when I look at Twitter.
Yeah, Tubi he said this in every interview that I've heard. I heard him on 3 different. He was talking to Peterson, he was talking to Jonah Goldberg, and he was talking to someone else. Might be the uncommon knowledge guy from Stanford. And in every one he talks about how Soylent Green was set this year.
No, I mean, how many things have been coming? Like George Jetson's birthday, like the date of birth was sometime this year.
Yeah, that was
so much stuff from Back to the Future. Has been in the last few years. Because that would have been 2015, right?
Yeah, because Back to the Future only went 30 years out of the way, right? Like,
so yeah, just so much.
Because it went from 85 to 55, and then 85 to 2015, I guess, isn't it?
Something like that.
When they went into the future, yeah.
I used to play this geek board game back in the 80s called Car Wars, and it was set in the 2000s. Again, dystopian. So people are driving around with cars with turrets on them, machine guns, and stuff like that. and they had a catalog, Uncle Al's The Duelist Pal. Oh yeah. And you could get upgrades for your cars and stuff like that. But the dates on those were like 2020 and stuff like that. Like we're actually getting into those years.
Well, shit like Death Race 2000, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, Oh, fuck, that was 20 years ago.
Exactly right.
You've got a quote here that I would take even money that England will not exist in the year 2000 from Paul Ehrlich.
There you go.
God, was this guy ever right about anything? Ever? I don't think so.
And you said Malthus came out of this?
No,
exposure
he
from
came
him?
from he's kind of a follow.
So he-
Ehrlich is more
A modern day disciple of Malthus.
Okay, so just applied. I just because we hadn't reached it yet, I can't imagine that the human population can infinitely grow on this planet and not run out of resources at some point.
the human population is not going.
Yeah,
to
I don't think that's going to be our
I don't know. Back in the 70s, I remember the population of the world being 3 billion. It's
Yeah.
grown 7 billion,
and
to 7 billion.
and birth rates have taken a nosedive
Have they?
in the last 20 years.
What was it?
Like there's no country in the G20 that is making replacement.
Yeah,
They're
it's the
thinking
G20
now that
that's-
they've revised. What is it? The UN has revised its
But it's
figures to say that instead of our global population peaking in 2080, it's going to peak in 2050.
But it's a trend line that as infant mortality decreases, so do birth rates. And so, the wealthier nations get, and the easier.
Well, yeah, I mean that was a logic that I always heard, and if this does end up on air, I hope no one chastises me or berates me for saying this. My understanding of the logic was that in the third world, some people would have lots of babies so that at least one of them would survive to take care of them in their old age, essentially.
Well, but it was the same here in the 1890s,
Yeah,
right? Like,
Yeah.
or in
Same
the 1850s or whatever. Same concept, right?
Yeah.
So as technology and living standards increase, the need to have so many kids decreases and birth rates plummet. And as wealth increases, birth rates plummet. So I discovered the other day, what's his face? Peter Zion's YouTube channel. I didn't realize he had his YouTube
he's got his own YouTube channel.
Yeah, Zion
Actually,
Geopolitics. He
I
does
think
like
I think I've probably seen.
he does he does
quick shorts from
there's
his
shorts.
traveling.
Yeah, they're doing like he's in Lake Louise this week actually.
yeah.
But what was his last book that he was out plugging recently?
Beginning of the end or something like that.
Oh, the end of the world is just the beginning.
Yeah.
But Zion's point is, he's arguing that I think by 2040, there will be half as many Chinese people as there are now.
Yeah, one of his big things is that Russia and China have gone off a demographic cliff.
Yeah, because Chinese got a lost generation because of the one-child population problem, and then the Russians have a lost generation because of the economic catastrophe that happened to them after the wall fell. So,
Wow.
I was reading an article about Japan today because Japan is already in
serious
population decline.
Serious decline, yeah.
And they are kind of like leading the world in this. Their population dropped by 250,000 last year alone.
Yeah.
There are 8 million uninhabited homes in Japan. In that they're mainly in smaller centers and more rural centers.
Yeah, there's places. I saw something. I think maybe Vice had something on YouTube.
Because people are
you could buy
generally, the trend in urbanization is continued. And of course, there's fewer and fewer children being born in Japan. So people inherit these structures. They can't sell them because no one's desirous to buy them. And they don't want to pay to dismantle a structure that they themselves aren't getting any benefit out of it, so they just leave them. And entire neighborhoods are being basically overgrown with weeds in large tracts of abandoned structures in Japan. There are more adult diapers sold every year in Japan than infant diapers. As their number of octogenarians increases. Now, I don't know if that's a problem in and of itself. It's an interesting stat.
No, that's interesting. But I mean, that's kind of
Their number of advanced stage seniors is definitely higher than their number of infants.
I think that's the most interesting point you've made. 'Cause now my mind is kind of colliding with itself, trying to go because I think I've always looked at ever since the Depends revolution, whenever
Yeah.
that was 15, 20 years ago, I thought, okay, this is just bullshit. This is just some marketer coming up with something for people, right?
Like adult incontinence?
Yeah, like let's make a thing out of nothing, because
Oh.
basically the whole makeup, hair, perfume, that's all been taken. Like that.
No.
Okay, what's the next thing?
No,
right?
I disagree.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That was an assumption I had until
For
the moment
example,
you said that, right?
Look at any upholstered chair in a senior's residence. There are, like, adult incontinence is definitely an issue.
I'm not saying it isn't, right? Like, but you've forced me to
Oh, I see what you mean.
to collide these things
Yeah.
in my head and
Yeah.
kind of go, yeah, okay.
Yeah. It's like that's something I think a lot about. Like, I don't mean to distract from today's topic, but it is something
Which
I would like to
eventually we'll
cover
get
with
to.
you guys.
Yeah.
Is I try and imagine, like, okay, we're headed for depopulation or declining populations, but this is pretty new ground.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we've had times in our past where population dipped below replacement rate. For example, the most recent was a short blip in the Great Depression in early years of the Second World War. There was also a slight dip at another point, I think, during the First World War. But these were very short blips. It looks like we're headed to a sustained period of declining populations for, like, more than just a blip. And, what's this going to look like? Now, it should be pointed out that the only people in the world who generally have a worse track record in predictions than environmentalists are demographers. You could fill a book with, like, incredible failed predictions. But there are certain things in the very, very near term that we can look at with a fair amount of confidence. Morgan Stanley, for example, who are not demographers, they're financiers, have released their analysis saying that they believe that 45% of women between the ages of 18 and 40 are going to be single and childless by the year 2030, only 8 years from now. When you think about that, that is a really, really interesting
Say it again. Sorry.
statistic. 45% of women in what we consider to be prime childbearing years
Right.
are going to be single
And childless.
and childless.
Globally,
No, just in the United States.
United States.
But we can take that with confidence as a proxy for the developed world.
No,
Like Western Europe, Canada, Australia.
for the developed world. Okay,
Developed.
sorry.
Yeah. Like, that's not going to apply to Bombay. It's not going to apply to Kinshasa. But it would apply to Ottawa. It would apply to Melbourne. It would apply to, say,
No,
Copenhagen.
I mean, you're probably right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly.
So what is that world going to look like?
This goes back kind of to our original, to the Lost podcast.
Kind of does.
Now,
Now,
we talked about, with the question of that,
Yeah.
that one was, do women even like men anymore?
yeah. Like, and one of the things we talked about was, okay, if 45% of women are single, that means a lot of guys. A similar number of guys are going to be single.
Yep.
And what we can presume, based on our experience of today, is that not a lot of people really think that's a desirable end state. They're not single because they want to be. It's because they feel they cannot find a suitable partner. Or a partner that they want to be with.
Well, because going back to the Japan thing, and it's just what you're talking about, how old they were getting, I was thinking about it. I'd seen a few stories. I think there was a Vice story from a couple of years ago. They went to Japan and they talked to young Japanese women, like Zoomers and younger millennials about Japanese men. And Japanese women don't seem to like Japanese men very much.
Right.
They were all very, like...
The phenomenon of what they call grass eaters.
Yeah.
Men who have just given up on dating and courtship completely live as there was another term of basically people who live in urban environments as hermits. They work online. They do everything online. They order, like, the things that we used to do that required a certain amount of social interaction, entertainment, going to the theater or the film, getting your groceries, doing your banking. All of these things can now be done in the privacy of your own home. You can order your groceries online and someone drops them off for you outside your door. You pay electronically. That there is now, it's such a common phenomenon that it has created, or it has earned its own lexical term in the Japanese language for people who live in complete isolation from anyone else. This is new ground. We almost every kind of social phenomenon up to this point, we could look back and say, well, something really like this has happened before. And we can take guidance and illumination from the way it was in the past. Some of this stuff is kind of new. I struggle to find an equivalent in human history where we can say, well, we had something like this before. This is how it played out.
Yeah.
Or, these were the effects. Another issue in Japan is a growing field of, see, a lot of seniors are living alone and they die. And there's no one there to discover their body, anything. Mm-hmm. A growing field of people who clean up after a corpse has been left unattended for 4 or 5 days.
Actually, this is a concept someone mentioned, just conceptually, like 30 years ago or something like this, is regarding murder victims. After a crime scene is done with,
there was a film about that, wasn't there?
Who do you hire to go?
Yeah.
It was the wife of a friend. It was the wife of a friend, and
Yeah.
she was like, she didn't know what to do with herself professionally. She approached me semi-humorously, but you know what there's a big demand for? It's people to clean up after a murder site after the crime scene's been released.
There is a company here in Edmonton that does that, actually. But not just crime scene. But,
you got to figure.
Or accidental deaths. But say after flood damage, environmental disaster, something like that. Yeah,
sewer backups, all that crap.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Something that I've thought that ties into the 8 million uninhabited structures in Japan. Whether we do this collectively or individually, it's going to have to be done. We cannot allow a huge amount of structures to remain uninhabited. It's an environmental hazard.
It's a big fire hazard.
It's a huge fire hazard. It's a public hazard in that unsafe structures, weathering, collapsing, they're a danger to the society as a whole. So one way or the other, we're going to figure it out. So this is going to happen. These things are going to be torn down and removed, and the area returned, presumably, it's going to be reclaimed, basically. Returned to some sort of pre-structural state. That's probably going to be an emerging field of how do you take a housing development like this when it is empty and completely surplus to need and return it to a natural state in the same way that when a strip mine is finished and concluded and no longer needed. A reclamation.
There's an opportunity for Japan here that they're not going to take because of their insular tendencies. Mm-hmm. But there's a whole cohort of younger millennials and Zoomers who are bitching that they can't afford homes in the major urban centers in North America and stuff like that. And if Japan wanted, because even rural Japan is kind of really urban.
Because
it
is such a small.
Because you can't be more than 50 miles from something. So.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. There's an opportunity there for them to even if they just limited age, under 35 or something like that, to massively
Japan
open.
has always resisted immigration because
Absolutely.
they don't want a dilution of Japanese culture.
Yeah. But they're going to be, and maybe this is true for all of humanity, but they're fucking going to go extinct because they stopped fucking.
I don't know. See, that's a real leap. You know what I mean? Their population is still several hundred million.
Is it?
I guess. It's
over
a lot of people. Even if you just say
Google.
Google it up. What number? How many
Japan.
Japanese people are there under the age of 30? I think it's still greater than the entire population of Canada.
Oh, it's easily. Canada's only 38.
Yeah.
Odometer.
So it is certainly if we can see what their age
125 million.
125 million. So it's 4 times.
Look at the yearly growth rate.
It's plummeting. But can you scroll down and find their population pyramid?
Here's a population pyramid.
Like kind of like a Peter Zeihan style population pyramid diagram. Like it shows that, like it shows your demographics in a pyramid based on left side is male, right side is female, and then the age cohorts by decade.
They don't appear to have a population pyramid.
There's got to be one out there.
Check the Google again.
Yeah,
Population
check
pyramid, Japan.
Let's check the Google in there. Yeah.
Also, while you're in there, check out Italian purse snatcher.
Italian purse snatcher. Yes. Right. Anyway, yeah, that's one of those things. Whip that guy up. Now, is that Japan? No, that's not Japan. That's Japan.
There's Japan.
Okay, so we can say that if we look at the 35, let's say the 30 to 34 and on down, kind of, it's starting to look more like a pencil.
Yeah, absolutely.
Instead of an ice cream cone, it's starting to look more like a pencil. For all we know, in maybe another, say, 20 to 30 years, Japan's population could stabilize. Instead of, like, just because what's happening now...
There probably is a floor.
Yeah. Like, if
for
something's
everything,
happening
but-
now, there's no guarantee that's going to happen later.
Yeah.
Right? So, I mean,
As they say,
Japan
in the market's
experienced...
past performance is not an indication of future results.
Yeah. Japan experienced a baby boom, just like North America did after the Second World War.
Yeah.
So who's to say that it wouldn't experience a boom again? Or at the very least, that populations will reach a floor where a stability kicks in, and then it becomes kind of flatlining and self-sustaining with very little variation either way for a long period of time.
Well, I think from something you said earlier that we've actually got a variation on typical human behavior, and it seems to be within the developed world, and it's just a lack of interest in mating.
Well, there
Marriage.
was I think not so much mating, but definitely marriage. There was
or the opposite sex.
there's
from what I just heard, right?
an interview.
Well, it's mating too. Like Zoomers have put in a lot of barriers to entry.
It's true.
To sex.
This is true.
There's a whole whack of new barriers to entry to sex that our generation and
this is true.
even millennials don't have. And Zoomers are like making it harder and harder to bone all the time.
Well, I think that's also because
Not that we're trying to, folks.
now that courtship has changed.
Courtship has definitely changed.
Courtship has definitely changed.
No, sex has changed. The mystique around it has changed. It doesn't exist anymore, right? I mean, it's the exposure to it is just
Perhaps.
Well,
everywhere.
Perhaps.
I mean, again, there's it's not none of these things have univariate causes, but like porn's.
Yeah.
Kids are growing
Yes.
up. Guys or young men are growing up educated in sex from porn, as opposed
And that's becoming
to learning about it with their first partner.
And we're seeing
right.
more and more that's happening to young girls now as well.
Yeah.
That you could easily say 100% 10, 15 years ago that, yes, this was overwhelmingly a male phenomenon.
Yeah.
You can't say that today.
See, yeah, I don't.
That more and more we're seeing young girls becoming educated and introduced to sex
Through porn.
through porn.
Yeah.
So that's a change that's coming up.
In the bad old days, did it have to be? Because, like, my first sexual partner was 7.5 years older than me. And that was my first relationship.
Wow.
So I count
How
myself.
old were you?
19.
Okay.
She was 27.
How did you meet?
Like,
Give me some context. Give me some background here.
well, in the military, we were both doing summer taskings out in
Okay.
in Chilliwack.
Okay.
So and then ended up we went and then after the tasking was over, she lived in Winnipeg, so I followed my dick out to Winnipeg, and then she got a job in the federal.
Well, you were the chosen one, so I mean,
yeah. Well, literally, yeah.
Being the guy who gets to sleep with a female service member
I was,
on a base. Holy cow!
Yeah, that's a feather in your cap.
The worst part, like her roommate in Chilliwack. Mm-hmm. So the girl, her name was Tammy. Her roommate was this woman named Margie, who was she was a clerk from like 44 Field Squadron in Trail.
Yep.
The hottest woman I ever met in the Army ever
Was the roommate.
was the roommate.
Yeah.
It's just like
That's a
been
distraction.
that's kind of been the story of my life. Just like
Tammy was no great looker or what?
Oh no, she wasn't unattractive at all, but it was just
Okay,
like,
just compared to
compared to
the
Margie.
Giselle Bundchen of Chilliwack. Yes.
Yeah, it's just like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Literally the hottest woman I've ever met in the Army. And I met some fairly attractive people, but god damn, this woman was beautiful.
Right.
But anyway, that's irrelevant.
I can be a bit of a distraction.
But I was lucky, right? Like, so she's bumping on the door at 30 when we get together. So she knows a lot more, and I know nothing. So I was lucky to learn.
A good match, actually.
Right? Yeah.
A good match.
Like,
good match.
it's always recommendable. But so I guess my question was, in the bad old days, was it like women were having to learn what they disliked in sex from bad sexual experiences? Well, so maybe it's the same.
I think that's the same.
That's the same. Women, and then eventually they'll find a guy who listens, and they can teach him what they like.
Right. But I think men learn the same way too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
I don't know. I was fortunate to have a teacher, right? Someone who was experienced.
Yeah. I wasn't that fortunate. I know I was probably a shit lover until I was 40 something.
You know, I used to think that I was. You know what? My opinion on my own abilities sexually are always overly influenced by my last relationship.
Yeah.
Right? Like if my last relationship was very good in that department, I think I'm good to go. Like I'm all right. But if my last relationship really, really kind of fizzled out sexually near the end, then I kind of think, nah, I suck. So yeah, for me, it's very, I'm very,
I don't know really
how very myopic assessment.
What the great way is to measure, because I can.
Well, yeah,
I can always.
Unless
I'm not like, I can always make a woman orgasm because I am prepared. I am prepared to be a cunning linguist for as long as it takes.
But
right?
how do you know she's not a cunning actress?
Yeah.
Well, because eventually they'll just say stop. You go down there for 45 minutes and they'll just be like, look, it's not going to happen.
She starts reading a
Maybe.
book.
Yeah.
Maybe.
You're like, okay, well, this ain't
But
going to
maybe
work.
she also fakes an orgasm to make you think, so that you'll stop.
Yeah, but
Well,
I mean,
And that's a lot less awkward.
I'm not going to say that I can't be fooled. I'm not going to say that. But
Exactly. I'm saying we don't know.
Yeah, but now you're
don't
talking
know.
third-year pop psychology, right? I mean, like, okay,
Yeah,
why
sure.
would a woman
Still valid.
fake an orgasm? Well,
Because
there's gonna
it's
be reasons
easier.
and,
It's a
like-
lot
Tell me
less
what I'm doing
awkward.
wrong.
It's a lot.
I don't know.
less-
I've never.
And you know what?
I don't have a lot of sexual experience. I haven't had a
lot
lot
of
of
women
partners,
are
but I've never
really-
had a partner who was afraid to tell me what I was doing wrong.
A lot of women are really loath to do that. They're, and I don't blame them. I mean, it's really, I suppose I never really thought about it until I had a partner who was absolutely lousy.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God. Like, you want to say to her, like, she thinks she's doing great work. And you're like, you really need to stop this because this is not enjoyable, even in the slightest. But then how do you say that? Because they're coming from a good place. And like they're trying to do something that's enjoyable for you. Their intention, like they're doing the Lord's work here, Yeah. And then you come up and say, okay, you are so far from your intentions.
Yeah,
That's
but
crushing.
yeah.
That's a horror. And you think she's going to take that well?
And so you
Hell, well, nobody.
Yeah,
It doesn't go well either in either direction,
yeah,
right?
So you just answer the why do women fake orgasms?
Right,
question
exactly.
right there.
She doesn't want to hurt your feelings. She doesn't want to make you feel lousy about yourself. Now, we can't fake an orgasm. Or at least if you can, I'm going to give you the slow clap.
Yeah.
Boy, we can't. But I think what we do is we go the other way. We fake an arousal level that's so great that we have to change and do something different because we just can't control ourselves. Like, And she thinks, oh, okay, right on. I was doing something good there because now he's, completely out of control and going to ravish me. When in reality, it's like, look, if we don't change the style of stimulation here, I'm going to lose layers of skin. And this cannot continue. So, but of course you don't want to say that, right? It's very easy when we're just sitting here as three dudes, just chatting around a table to say, yeah, you should be candid and frank with your partner. Mm-hmm. Not so easy in reality.
Well, of course you can.
It's hard to.
When you're intimate with someone, there is a certain level of emotional trust that must be preserved.
Well, it's the very word intimacy comes into play.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is, right?
I had one time I went on a date when I was internet dating, and this girl was quite attractive. She had a very distinctive, very square jaw.
Okay.
And so we were talking about like horror stories from the internet dating, and she's like, someone sent her a comment, and it was just LOL Quagmire. but she didn't know, she'd never seen Family Guy, right? So she's like, I don't know what that means. I don't know if it's insult.
Oh, that is.
And so then I'm like, oh, that's an insult. And I said it out loud, and she's like, why? And I was like, oh, fuck, now I got to explain it to her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dumbass.
Shithead.
Or you lies.
Okay, well, I'm just going to pay the bill and go home now.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
No, I think I did an okay job, but we never went on a second date. So, but I was like, she did change her profile photo. But I said to her, I said, look, you're a beautiful woman. Don't make any dates.
Yeah.
And she was very attractive. Like, it was, I'm like, you're a beautiful woman, but you have a distinctive jaw. She's like, I know. Okay. So your picture kind of emphasizes, your profile picture kind of emphasizes the squareness of your jaw. So maybe if the camera was a little higher, it might work better.
Yeah.
Right. She's like, okay. So she changed her picture. I'm like, yeah, that's good.
Hard thing to say, though.
But yeah, I was
I
like,
guarantee you that hurt when she learned that.
yeah. Well, she knew. I mean, she wasn't unaware of the distinctiveness of her facial profile.
Yeah, but when it's one thing to suspect, it's another.
But yeah, I mean, there was no getting out of that.
Well,
one, so.
and the fact that some guy went out of his way to say that.
What
I mean,
an utterly
Well,
what an
I mean,
asshole,
yeah.
right?
Oh,
You know,
yeah, what an asshole.
You never underestimate the ability of men to be assholes on the internet.
Oh yeah,
It's fucking horrific. I was
that's fucking terrible. There's a place in hell for that guy.
it should be.
I'm going to pause the conversation. Well, you guys can carry on because we haven't started recording. I'm going for a smoke because
Okay.
and then maybe we should get down.
Let's
to
pause.
brass
I
tacks.
want to boil up. I want to put your kettle to work and make a cup of coffee.
All right.
Not